Hello and welcome to another episode of Fundy Tidings. I'm your host Jay Remer, and with me today I have the Honorable John Ames, MLA for Charlotte-Campobello. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, Jay.
And in addition to being the MLA, you also are Minister of Tourism, Culture, and Heritage.
That's right.
That's quite a portfolio.
It is. It's a very interesting portfolio with a lot of great assets that we utilize in the province.
Well, the purpose of the show today, as with most of the Fundy Tidings shows, is to raise people's awareness of exactly what it is that people do, interesting people in the province. And so we're not going to talk about political issues today. We're really going to talk about the logistics of what being an MLA and a minister is all about.
Sure.
So we might as well start at the very beginning. And when did your interest in a career in politics actually begin?
Well, in a career, I guess we'd have to go back prior to when my interest of politics began in the first place, I think, and that probably would have been specifically in high school. I took a political science course, and I had a teacher that was very engaging, and we talked about a lot of great subjects. And I took a major in political science in my first degree in university as well. As far as being interested on the provincial side of things, I think that stemmed from when I became Deputy Mayor of St. Stephen and getting involved with a lot of the matters in the municipality, and that prompted me to have to deal with matters provincially and federally and regionally as well. So that's probably when my interest sort of developed into more of a path into where I am today.
Well, so what exactly are the responsibilities of an MLA? And you're in the, I guess, the party that's sitting, or whatever you call it. What is the difference between being an MLA of a party that's in power and one that isn't?
Well, first off, the first part of that question, basically an MLA wears two hats. You're a member representing your constituents in your riding, but you're also a member that is part of a party, political party that may or may not be in power. And based upon the policies that you create with your colleagues and your peers, those are the ideals and the morals, if you will, of that group, of that team. Now, the difference between an MLA in power versus an MLA not in power is the MLA that would be part of the governing party that's in power has an opportunity to be engaged in discussing policies that are part of a majority government and enact legislation and laws. Whereas if you're a MLA that's not in power, if you're an MLA in a riding that doesn't hold enough seats to form government, then your opportunities to push legislation into laws are not going to be quite as successful. That being said, I can't discuss what necessarily the roles and responsibilities are of those who are not in power, because I don't have that.
Because you're in power.
I don't want to call it a luxury, because I'd rather be in power. But you know, I have not been not in power, so it's something I can't really discuss. But as far as being in power, it I think pushes us to be held a little bit more accountable in terms of being responsible, not only to our residents in the region that elected us, but it also pushes us to be responsible for all the decisions that affect everybody in the province, or whatever jurisdiction you're speaking of.
Do the views of the constituents of, say, the Liberal Party, are they closely aligned with the general values of the Liberal? I mean, that seems like an obvious yes answer, but maybe there are times when the party as a whole differs from some of the constituents within the party.
Within the party or within the riding?
Within party members in the riding. So
yes.
Say I'm a Liberal, and you're a Liberal, and so the Liberal Party says we're not going to do this or we are going to do that, and I don't agree with that. So how do you differentiate? How do you represent your constituents if they have an opposing position from the party as a whole? So does the party as a whole take precedence over your constituents, or the other way around? Do you have to actually represent your constituents, or is this an issue that just simply doesn't come up?
It will certainly something that comes up on a daily basis, and as far as people having differences of opinion, that's something that happens every day. So there's always going to be someone who's going to be against a certain policy, and there's always going to be someone that's going to be in favor of a particular policy. Now, constituents of a particular riding, whether it's mine or if it's my own or someone else's, it all depends. You're always going to hear viewpoints from a group of people, and you have to hear what they have to say, and at the end of the day there's going to be a consensus given, and we in our system use democracy as a way to get things passed on agendas. And if you look at our policy conventions as a party, it's a way to discuss some of the policies that we enact as government. Now, does that mean that everything that's in the policy convention gets accomplished in year 1 or year 2 or throughout the whole mandate? Not necessarily. Every government that's formed is different. Some have a lot passed in the beginning. Some don't have hardly any of their policies formed. But when you have a policy convention, it's typically before an election, so that all Liberals or whatever party you're part of can get together and discuss what direction you want to push whatever jurisdiction you're representing. Now, just like anybody else on the street, no two people are going to have the same viewpoints on everything. We're not robots. So everyone's going to have a different viewpoint, and your viewpoint today may be different from what it was yesterday, and it may be different tomorrow, based on what information you get, based on what discussions you have with people. And that's not just as an individual on the street, that's as a representative or as a profession in whatever capacity or discussion we're talking about. So whether you're a constituent in a riding or a member of a party, regardless of where you're from, it usually goes by democracy rules. Now, when I say usually, it's because at the end of the day, there's things that come up, whether you're in cabinet or caucus of the forming party or government, that you need to make decisions on. And not everyone's going to agree on those decisions, even those that are a part of that government. But at the end of the day, you have to make decisions. That's what you're elected to do. And if you don't make decisions, then you end up with the status quo. You end up with governments that, well, they're not mobile, and you need to be constantly being available and representing the entire jurisdiction and the place that you come from.
Right.
And again, they're not always going to line up, unfortunately.
Right. So what do you do during a routine day, if there is such a thing as a routine day? I mean, you get up in the morning and then you come home in the afternoon. What happens in between?
Well, just like you say, there is no routine. That's, I guess, a bittersweet part of my job is, on one hand, there's no routine, and it can be frustrating because you're used to a certain way of life, you're accustomed to a certain manner of handling things. But on the other hand, it's sometimes exciting to try new and exciting experiences. So, for instance, Mondays are typically my constituency day. And as an MLA, I am in my riding going around the different villages and towns that I represent, and having meetings with whether it's key stakeholders of a particular interest group, or whether it's businesses, small or big, or whether it's just individuals that are having some issues or concerns. And it's not all problems, but there is a lot of issues that come up, and that's what we're there for. If you're not getting any satisfaction, if you're not finding any solutions by the normal or typical manners of the day, whatever agencies you're dealing with, well, that's when people come to their politicians. I haven't had success talking to this person or that person in whichever department or whichever capacity. Can you look into this and help us out? We deal with that all the time. And I have staff that help me out with that. It can be very demanding. So We have a schedule put in place to meet with people on these matters. And like I say, there's no routine as to when I'm doing particular things. It's not like businesses at one part of the day and individuals at another part of the day. It's whenever there's a spot available, I have to take it because it's very demanding. And as far as the day-to-day thing goes, it really never ends. It's a 24/7 job, and with today's technology, with Blackberries, with information on emails and texting and phone and social media, that's a whole other discussion. There's people that are at me all the time, and there's all kinds of different methods of communicating with me, and no two people utilize the same one. I guess the one that would be on the lower end compared to the old days would probably be by letter carrier. The majority of the questions and discussions I have with people now, I guess, would probably be through email. I get a lot of emails, but I talk to people on the phone a lot as well, and I talk to people in person a lot.
So when you're not talking to your constituents, what else do you do? Because you're obviously, you can't do that all day long. You wouldn't get anything done.
Well, in terms of my personal life, I don't really have much of one.
Well, no, I don't mean your personal life. I mean in the role as an MLA. Like,
Sure.
For example, how much time do you spend in the legislature discussing this kind of stuff? And the other question that I have, because I find it fascinating, is the amount of time that the legislature is actually closed, which seems most of the time. So I'm just wondering what the deal is there.
Sure. Well, as far as legislatures go, each one is different. As far as the amount of time that we have sat in the last year, it's about on average with the rest of the jurisdictions in the province. But a lot of people think that, well, when we're not sitting in the legislature, we've got time off to kick our heels up and have a lemonade. That's not the case. And in fact, the majority of the work I do as an MLA is done when I'm not in the legislature. When I'm in the legislature, that's the opportunity to sit down and discuss bills and have speeches on bills and to pass things into legislation and turn them into laws. Now, the time that we are there in the legislature on the floor, when people see it on TV, there's usually a couple hours at least, if not more, before we sit, and there's often times that we sit afterwards to debrief, and that's just for caucus members, but cabinet members sit even further than that. That's a whole other discussion we can chat about if you want. But the amount of time that we sit in the legislature is not always indicative of the amount of work that we're doing. There's a lot of work that we do with caucus meetings on particular days, and again, there's no particular routine or schedule for them, but whenever there's availability, we definitely have a lot of discussions, and if we can't meet personally face-to-face as a group, we usually have discussions on the phone. We have a lot of caucus calls.
So basically, what happens is you spend a certain amount of time talking to your constituents, and then you go back to the legislature and you hash out bills.
That's right.
And the rest of the time you're back talking to your constituents.
That's right.
So that's basically how you discover what your constituencies feel are priorities.
That's right. And again, with the various amounts of ways to discuss with people, I get an idea of what people are feeling and what they like and what they don't like in the constituency. And people see particular laws passed and they think, well, whether it's someone from St. Andrews or someone from one of the islands, there's going to be times where they're going to think, well, this isn't really beneficial to us. How come, we're not debating this on the floor? I can tell you there's a lot of things that happen behind closed doors, and that doesn't sound positive, but there's a lot of discussions that take place from all members, and we don't always agree. It's just like if you look at it in terms of teams and sports. You got a football team. There's guys on the team sometimes that don't necessarily agree with a particular play, but you're not going to take that ball and run the opposite direction.
Right.
That's counterproductive.
Right.
But you need to have those discussions in the dressing rooms and make sure that everyone's on the same page and doing the best that they possibly can for not just the team, but for the win for the school, for the win for the community, the win for the entire program. So it's the same thing with politics on a much larger scale.
Right.
You need to make sure you're doing the best you possibly can within the powers that you have.
Right.
And we talked about being in power versus not being in power. There's a lot more opportunity to have things accessible and have more exposure for you when you are in power, I believe. Certainly I have seen that from my side of being in power versus not being in power. So a lot of people may insist that, and there's issues that come up all the time. People insist, well, you need to leave your team or leave government. And it would be very easy to do that many times on many different issues, but once you're not once you're not at the table any longer, then you no longer have not only voiced yourself as a member, but you're also not having a very strong voice to advocate on behalf of other matters for other individuals, right, on sometimes bigger issues.
What role so you're a minister, what role do deputy ministers play? And if you're not a minister, so you obviously, you have a deputy minister, mm-hmm, but before you became a minister, you had to have other staff. Mm-hmm. What sort of interactions are there, and what do you depend on them for?
Okay, so we'll start with deputy minister. I have a deputy minister who I discuss matters with all the time. But the deputy minister isn't there to push any political objectives or motives or to tackle any specific policies we may have. The deputy minister is there to help push, promote, and make that department better in conjunction with the minister and the government. And the deputy minister works very, very well with other deputy ministers and with the executive, the cabinet itself, and helps carry out different mandates that are set forth.
I know that
department.
I don't mean to interrupt, but deputy ministers are not elected officials.
Nope.
And my understanding is that deputy ministers will continue with a portfolio through a variety of
Sure,
administrations, no matter what the party is.
Absolutely.
So that would seem to me, from a logical point of view, that they may be the person who the public would interface with most effectively, simply because they have more of a history and a deeper understanding, and their job, I guess, is to bring you to that level of understanding so that you can proceed with the mandate? Sure,
and if you look at it from that lens, it's a good way to understand that the role of the deputy minister, their objectives aren't to necessarily be focused on elections. Not to say that politicians are, a lot of people would argue that, but the deputy minister is somebody that can have a little bit of consistency throughout many different mandates, many different administrations, and it might not necessarily be the same party that's governing that jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. So it's good. So they have an opportunity to continue utilizing the department and making sure the department's being functional through transition periods. So when there's an election and there's a change in government, for instance, then not everything is going to be radically upheld, or there's not going to be an upheaval of every department. There's going to be an opportunity to continue on and have that continuity from before, and then if there's any policies that change, they can work with the government to have a smoother transition, mm-hmm, and to making sure those are implemented.
Mm-hmm. One of the questions that some constituents have put forward is, how are politicians in New Brunswick held accountable? Mm-hmm. In other words, everyone needs to be held accountable for things that they say, actions that they take, priorities that they
Sure.
set. Is it just during the actual election every so often that you either get reelected or you get booted? Or is there some mechanism in between to hold you accountable on a more regular basis?
Sure. Well, you're right. The elections themselves are the biggest method to utilize as far as holding elected officials accountable. Mm-hmm. That being said, every elected official is different. Many make promises. Many make many promises. Myself, when I went door to door, I never got into the habit of making any particular promises to people, because especially before you're elected, but even as an elected official, you don't know what's going to take place from day to day. I mean, you watch the news globally or nationally or even provincially, things change all the time, and you don't know what parameters you're going to be dealing with every single day, and sometimes certain things that you believe that you can do would be easier than other times, and other times certainly they could be a lot more difficult. Things change all the time, so I think the first thing I would recommend people that are interested in getting involved with politics is don't get into a habit of making a lot of promises that are going to be difficult to not only keep, but you don't want to give people false hope or false indications on particular things. So that's my stance on that. It's sort of my own personal policy is I don't want to give promises because I don't want it to look bad on me. I don't want to give promises because I don't want to give people false hope on things. Right. That being said, you can let people know where you stand on issues and what direction you're planning on going and taking on their behalf and on behalf of the entire riding and the entire province or whatever jurisdiction you represent.
So this leads to the next question, which deals with your relationship with the press. It can be argued that that journalism and especially actual factual news reporting has really all but disappeared. And so what I'm wondering is, because there's so many slants to everything, and who owns the newspaper puts the slant on and so forth. And I know that there are many people who rely on what they hear in the news, whether it's print or whether it's on the radio or whether it's television. This is where they believe all of this stuff. This is where they get their information. Yes. And it's often distorted, I would imagine. So what is your relationship with the press, and how do you handle them so that your message is kept as pure as possible?
Well, I will admit, and I don't think it's a secret to anybody that follows politics or anybody that's in politics, regardless of where you live or what jurisdiction you're involved with. The press is probably, and I'm not singling out any individual or any specific group or realm, but it's probably one of the more difficult things to have to encounter, because the messaging that you're trying to get across, the things that that you're working on and dealing with, you don't have any control as to how people are going to potentially spin it or how people are going to potentially take it. And that's just like having a conversation with you on the street. I can tell you what I know and what I'm working on, and you can believe me, or you can say, well, I don't believe him, and you can go and tell someone else the opposite. That's out of my control. And on a grander scale, rather, it's the same thing with the press. Now, the majority of people that are involved with the press, I do believe, I hope to believe that they do their very best to be unbiased, to be professional, and to provide the public with the facts, the readers or the listeners with the facts, so that they can form their own opinions, which I believe is extremely, extremely important for today's society, regardless if you're an elected official or just somebody that's interested in what's going on from day to day. Information, the power of information is very important, it's very crucial, and to be quite honest with you, the information that's gathered from people, their opinions is what, in essence, forms government eventually. And a lot of governments that are formed have policy platforms and policy conventions that make policies based on those very same opinions. And we talked before starting this interview that life isn't black and white. A lot of people have differences of opinion, even if it's two brothers. But dealing with the press, at the end of the day, you have to be available to discuss with them what is going on, because if you don't, then no one's going to know what's going on. I don't want people to be hearing things that are the opposite of what I'm saying. Right. That being said, I don't want people to think that I'm not saying anything at all. Right. Because that would not be my job. Right. And I try to reach out and discuss things with the many different avenues that we have available on a regular basis. And some are easier to deal with than others. And that's just life. It's not just politics. It's like any profession. You're going to have some personality interceptions that are a little more contentious than others.
True enough. So what are your greatest challenges as either an MLA or a minister? There must be some challenges that.
Well, of course. Well, just like any job, you have challenges that come up every day, and there's no shortage of that in my profession either. Like we talked about, having a consistent viewpoint on any given issue is impossible, and that's why politics, I think, is something that's difficult for people not only to understand, but difficult for people to get involved with, because things change all the time, and people sometimes have a difficulty in trying to make sure that what their viewpoints are getting addressed and getting, in essence, legislated eventually. So
well, there may be, some of the details that change and situations and circumstances, but surely the underlying principles don't change.
No, there's a lot of relevant consistencies that you can take from everyday average people that you talk to, and the challenges that we see today in our region, in our province, in our country, well, they are challenges, and we're no stranger to challenges. We've had challenges in the past, and we've had quite a consistency of challenges over the last, I argue 7-8 years specifically. But we need to handle those challenges in an effort that really makes everyone aware that not only that they're being heard, but that we're all in this together. Mm-hmm. And no, at the end of the day, we're not always going to agree on what the solutions are. Mm-hmm. But sitting back and giving criticism is important. We need to see what other options are available, but it needs to be constructive criticism, and we all need to realize at the end of the day why we're fighting in the first place or arguing in the first place. Mm-hmm. is because we both care about the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I think it's very important for the public, whether you're an MLA in your region, in your riding, or you're a politician in any jurisdiction throughout the entire, let's say, the province, that we all need to know that we all care about that body mm-hmm. the same. So we need to try our best to paddle in the same direction, if you will. Mm-hmm. There's going to be different lengths of paddle. There's going to be different sizes of paddle. There's going to be different strokes, different ways that people are going to use that paddle. But at the end of the day, we need to do the best we possibly can to paddle in the same direction, mm-hmm. because having contentious issues is always going to take place, mm-hmm. but handling them and trying to form a consensus is certainly possible. So we need to do it in a constructive mm-hmm. and relevant fashion.
We have to end it there. We have run out of time, but that is a very good way of ending things, so I hope that we all start paddling in the same direction.
You too.
And thank you very much for taking the time out of an obviously very busy schedule to come in and talk with me today, and to let all of your constituents know exactly what a day in the life of a politician is all about. It's very complicated and fascinating. And thank you all for watching this episode of Fundy Tidings, and I look forward to seeing you on another time.